Hello, PriceSmart. Welcome to our podcast, At the Club, a communication channel with our employees, where we will share valuable information, fascinating topics, and inspiring stories that you haven't heard before, keeping us connected on a whole new level. Join us on this journey and discover everything happening at the club. PriceSmart Inc. provides this podcast for general information. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are the personal views of the podcasters and their guests, and not the views, policies, or opinions of PriceSmart. PriceSmart makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. This podcast might contain forward-looking statements concerning PriceSmart's anticipated plans, revenues, and related matters. These statements are subject to risks and uncertainties that could cause actual results to differ materially, including the risks detailed in PriceSmart's most recent annual report on Form 10-K and other filings with the SEC, which are accessible on the SEC's website at www.sec.gov.
Being the head of the government affairs function is very much about, I think, taking a big idea and building partnership with others.
What type of role does legal and government affairs play at a company like PriceSmart?
I started, 10 years ago, and there was only 6 people in the legal department, all based in San Diego.
We have a direct, concrete, and significant impact on the economies of these countries.
We are good corporate citizens. We play by the rules.
We put integrity at the forefront, along with the other values, passion, community, respect, continuous learning, all things that I feel like align with my own personal values.
Welcome to the At the Club podcast, PriceSmart's employee and member podcast. I'm David Price, our host, and I'm excited to be here today. We're in San Diego today, which is great. Hometown kid. We've recorded these things all over the place, and it's nice to be on the home front recording. And I have 2 really great guests on today's talk to join us, and I hope you enjoy the pod. And remember, you can subscribe to us, sign up for notifications, do all those things so you don't miss anything. We do about one every month, and they're great, and I feel really privileged to get to do these. So jumping right in, guys, thank you for joining me today. So I'm here with Francisco Velasco, PriceSmart's EVP and General Counsel. You have a long list of titles, but I'm going to leave it at that. And Shane Christensen, our SVP of Government Affairs, who is a part of Francisco's team. And today we've set aside the time to talk about the role of legal and government affairs in running a global company, which is a big topic, but I think is going to be really interesting for our listeners. So thanks for joining. So what I wanted to start with before we really dive into the meat of things is just a chance to get to know you guys a little bit. So maybe starting with Francisco, you could share a little bit. How did you end up at PriceSmart? What's your story, your professional story? How did you end up with us? I know you've been at the company about 10 years.
So you're right. I'm approaching my 10-year anniversary. I'm really excited. And before PriceSmart, I was in the pharma industry in Chicago, and I spent there 7-8 years. And I still remember I got a call from a recruiter saying there's a position in San Diego for a company called PriceSmart. I didn't know anything about PriceSmart. So I said, okay, general counsel position, they don't come very often. So I took a plane and I interviewed, and I really liked it. But being very honest, it really had a very interesting and challenging job in the pharmacy industry. So I wasn't too excited. Like, well, this could be for me, maybe not. And then second round of interviews, and I got to meet Robert. And then not only that, Robert invited me and my wife was originally from Medellin to come over to San Diego. And we spent some time with Robert. She was very gracious, picked us at the airport, showed us around. And I remember going back to the hotel, and Natalia looked at me and she said, Francisco, how come you not take this job? I mean, this is feels more like a family. And it was very interesting. And I was listening to John's podcast, and he also had this same connection because all my professional history has always been with corporate America. Great learning, rare experience, but the human element or the family element is not there. And although we're a public company, still having this family touch, everything was meaningful. And that's what drove me and made the decision to come to PriceSmart. So long story short, after after many years in pharma, I ended up here, and I'm, enjoying every minute.
Thanks for sharing that about the family connection. I know sometimes it's like, are we a public company, or if we're kind of a hybrid? We're a public company, obviously, but we have that family culture, which I think is really important. And so you're from Mexico originally.
Originally from Mexico, studied law in Mexico, and then I did a master's in New York, passed the New York bar, and worked at a New York law firm for many years. And then from there, I've always been in corporate America. So, and then, I live here in San Diego.
Great. And Shane, how did you find your way to PriceSmart?
Well, it was not via corporate America. Actually, I've spent most of my career serving our country and being in government. And by the way, just as we start, David, let me say thanks for inviting me and Francisco on the podcast, and say how impressed I am that you take time to do this, given the schedule that you've got. And I actually think it's remarkable to see somebody in a leadership position like yours who takes time to get to know some of our colleagues and has this kind of in-depth discussion. So it's a great privilege to be here, and thanks.
Thanks, Shane. I appreciate that.
So yeah,
Thank you, because you always say the best things, and that's why.
This is why he's in government affairs. This guy is a diplomat, at least at his core.
I didn't start off as a diplomat. In fact, I started off as a travel writer. And I don't know if you know this.
Really?
I wrote the first something very.
Maybe you should be the host.
No, I never did this my podcast, but I wrote the first Frommer's travel guide many years ago on Argentina, and then wrote parts of travel books on Mexico, Brazil, Ecuador.
That's like
fell in love.
Dream job right there.
It was a dream job. I didn't make any money, but it paid enough to let me get a hotel room and eat a good meal and start to see the world. And that was really when I started falling in love with Latin America. And so in 2000. I had an offer to join the Foreign Service, which is the U.S. Diplomatic Corps. That really was a dream for me. I had studied international relations and political science earlier in university, and during my 20 kind of plus years in government, I ended up spending about half of my time working on Latin American issues. I was in Cuba. We were talking about this earlier for the reestablishment of diplomatic relations. So I was there in the summer of 2015 when Secretary John Kerry came, and then President Obama.
Somehow we were there at the same time. Super weird.
I served as chief of staff for the State Department's kind of bureau that's responsible for Latin America and the Caribbean. And then my last overseas assignment was as consul general to a place called Porto Alegre, responsible for U.S. relations with southern Brazil.
Yep.
And following that assignment, I
say
Gaúcho, basically. Wonderful country to be in, and I know you know it well because of your family connections.
Yeah.
So I came to San Diego next to do a diplomatic fellowship at UC San Diego's Institute of the Americas, a wonderful organization that tries to catalyze private sector action, basically to bring the United States closer to Latin America and the Caribbean. Run now by a wonderful man called Richard Kai, who used to work at PriceSmart. And he actually introduced me to Francisco. And this was really serendipitous because although I hadn't necessarily been thinking about leaving the Foreign Service, my family and I were in San Diego, one, because we'd been international nomads for some time and we're looking to find a base somewhere. And what better place in the world than San Diego, which is just awesome for families. But two, my father was close by. He was aging and not in good health. And I really wanted my children to know their grandfather, who we'd been far away from for most of my career before it was too late. And so then we started this kind of long courtship and recruitment process. And one of my favorite memories in that was when the three of us, plus your father, had lunch together, and we all ordered lunch, and Robert was asking me a series of questions, and about 3/4 the way through the meal, it was you, David, who said, "Dad, I don't think Shane's had anything to eat." And Robert said, "Don't worry about that. This is too important. He can eat later." So we finished up the questions. I took my lunch home and ate it, and
I was like, this poor guy. I mean, like, the sandwich was just sitting there. I think we all got tuna melts or something. Yeah, that's funny. I remember that. Right on. Well, we appreciate you being on board with us. And, I know it hasn't been very long that you've been with the company. I think
started in September.
Right. So we're coming up on 9 months. And you've been doing a great job. And I'm grateful you're on the team.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I'm grateful to be here. And in many ways, it's a natural transition for diplomacy. And, being being the head of the government affairs function is very much about, I think, taking a big idea and building partnership with others. And we can talk more about the function, but I see my role as being a bridge between the company and the governments in the countries in which we operate, plus Washington, which is its own kind of beast in a sense.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, I think that's a good segue to get kind of right into things. So, one of the things I wanted to touch on for our listeners, many of whom are employees, is what type of role does legal and government affairs play at a company like PriceSmart? Like, why do we have these functions? And it might seem maybe elementary or obvious, but I think maybe it's not. There's a lot of different things, like within the quote unquote Department of Legal, a lot of things you guys do. And one of them, the newest thing, happens to be government affairs, but there's many other things. So I'm just curious, maybe starting with Francisco, if you could kind of give like a little primer on, like, for a company like PriceSmart, why do we have a chief legal officer?
So, great question. So in a nutshell, I think I use two words, and I've used them at YBM, and you probably heard me saying them. So I think our main role is to protect and to enable. So protect, I think I'm protecting the company, the corporation, but also our employees, protecting you, protecting everybody that works in the company, making sure that, you receive the proper training, the proper education, the proper tools, so that you don't make mistakes that make you lose your job, so that we're in compliance with laws and regulations of different countries, that if we get sued, we have the right response and we can act accordingly. So to me, protecting the company is just core. And you will probably hear me, say a number of times, I'm not the lawyer for David or the lawyer for John Hildebrand. I'm the lawyer for the corporation. That's a hat I wear. So I started, 10 years ago, and there was only 6 people in the legal department, all based in San Diego. And I was trying to understand why. And they're all capable people and all very smart. They helped build the company. But when I joined, I realized, look, this is not what we need. We need people on the ground. We need people giving closer legal advice and helping protecting our employees. And I'm deviating a little bit, but part of the story is, how do we make sure that we really protect our company and the people that work at the company? And then the second aspect of our job, which is to me probably the one that I'm most passionate about, is enabling. So I love challenges, or I love to be in a meeting where someone says, oh, we can't import this because someone says the regulation, it's the opposite of what we believe. I love those chats because I love to go in and really understand, is this really true? Who can we challenge? Is there someone we have to sue? Is there something we can do to overcome that? And that to me is enabling and adding value. How do we move the needle? Because it is expensive to have a legal department, to have me and Shane and the compliance team and their team. It is expensive. So we need to be able to provide value to the corporation, really be of assistance to allow, people like John and Chris to do their jobs, and Mark, and everybody, there should be making the clubs run like they do, clockwork. Anything we can take off their backs, that's our role. So I think in those two words, I summarize it.
Right. So the legal department, in many ways, is a business partner or a legal partner for our business areas or commercial areas, be it buying, operations, marketing, HR, to support either through more of a protecting mechanism or through an enablement mechanism. Sure. To help those teams do their jobs. I know, for example, you have people that really support my team, at least my current team, before I move into my new job, that really support them on software contracts and reading through contracts, statements of work, and all sorts of things. So it's a big help for sure. So today I want to spend, I think, a little bit more time on government relations, particularly because PriceSmart is a company that works in 12 countries, plus the United States and USVI. So needless to say, it's a lot of countries, and they're all sovereign nations with their own domestic political dynamics, their own tax, fiscal and monetary policies, some of which are simpler than others. And we have employees in every country. So we're an employer, we pay taxes, and we import products, we export products, we do all sorts of things. So government affairs, government relations is a relatively new function for us, but it's not a new thing because it's something we've been doing maybe ad hoc. So I'm curious, why did we add the function, and what do you do?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I think it's remarkable that given how big PriceSmart is, the fact that, 12,000 employees, more or less, $5 billion, operating in 12 countries, plus headquartered here in the United States, that you didn't have a government affairs. And I remember asking this question, like, are you sure you don't have one? And the reality is, as you said, you were doing this in an ad hoc way. And it's testament, I guess, to the strength of the business model that you didn't have to have before.
And our people. Because so much has fallen on the shoulders of our country managers and their teams to really take on things, which they still do. But now we have your support, which is helpful.
So I think my role, I would probably put it in a few different buckets, but probably first and foremost to this point is allowing me to kind of work with people across the system in the business to orchestrate and help kind of coordinate and strategize about the way that we engage governments in a way that we can become maybe more proactive than we were able to do when we didn't have this capacity. I think providing market intelligence and early warning, particularly to leadership, is an important aspect of this role. And I just completed an exercise where we have looked at all 12 of our markets. We've done these things called country profiles that include leading political, economic, business, and investment indicators. We kind of analyze the competitive landscape in each of those countries, and then we include information about some of the key regulatory, finance, permitting challenges that we face. And that's really there to be a resource for all of you. And I would say, government affairs is absolutely, a business partner and in service to the business units. That's why I'm here. And we now have a SharePoint site that people can access those from. I think identifying who are the key people, we sometimes use the word stakeholders, in each of our markets that have some influence over our business. And that can be governments. I'm thinking, David, about trade ministries, finance ministries, health ministries, the trade promotion authorities, making sure that we get out early and establish relationships with those folks so that we can draw on the goodwill and the trust that we develop before a crisis emerges. And we can start looking for kind of those win-wins to think about how is the business that we're bringing into the country, how does that also benefit the local society? So I think those are a few of the key elements. Being a strategic advisor to leadership, I think, is also an important piece. Understanding what is the emerging kind of trade policy landscape, and then being able to distill what are some of the, not just the challenges,
right,
but also the opportunities.
I think most importantly, the opportunities. And I want to ask you something that wasn't a question that we had really prepared for, but I think it's really important, particularly for our employee listeners. And I wanted to hear from your perspective, what kind of role does PriceSmart play as a multinational company in these markets? Like, how do you present us when you talk to sovereign government in one of our countries? Like, how do we position ourselves? Like, what kind of corporate citizen do we want to be?
Yeah, I love the question. Thanks for asking. And we do have, we have a U.S. identity and a certain kind of set of messaging that goes with U.S. audiences, but then we have this very strong local identity in each of the countries in which we operate. And one of the reasons that I was very inspired and motivated to join this company in the first place is the fact that the impact that we have across the region is significant. I don't know that we always have the visibility that I think we ultimately can, and I hope to be able to increase that. But if you think just on the corporate side, so we've got the direct investment that we make in the economies, which helps contribute to prosperity of those societies.
Okay, so to translate, so direct investment would be like when we open a new location.
When we open a new location, when we create, hundreds of jobs, when we start sourcing, and about 50% of our products come from the United States, and we're a wonderful contributor and promoter of U.S. exports, but then we also source about 50% on average of our goods.
And every location that's new has over 100 employees, which they also have distribution centers.
We have distribution centers. Right. We contribute and support small and medium-sized businesses and enterprises.
Who buy from us. Some of whom we buy from.
And in some cases, we are supporting the emerging export markets that these countries have, taking products from that particular country and then sending it elsewhere in the region. So we have a direct, concrete, and significant impact on the economies of these countries. And then associated with that, we have in many of the countries this incredible philanthropic effort that goes to supporting underserved communities, women, youth. I mean, the chance for me to be able to talk about our commitment via Aprender y Crecer, PriceSmart Foundation, is, that's really wonderful. And then on top of that, when you mentioned being a model corporate citizen, there's the fact that we are committed to sustainability. So there's this whole kind of package of values and interests that we bring into the markets in which we operate, which I think very few companies can champion and be as proud of as we can.
Can I add a few things to that? Because I think one of the impact that we have in our markets goes somewhat beyond. When I think about, we are good corporate citizens, we play by the rules. And as you know, a lot of our competitors don't play by the rules. And I think we should.
Our number one value is integrity.
Very proud.
We try to do the right thing. That's our number one.
Get this question all the time. Oh, they're not playing by the rules. Can we also, stop the registration? No, he gave it to us, and we're going to go to this government and say, look, we're playing by the rules. So, make everybody play by the rules or change them. But I think that helps local governments to say, yes, look, these guys are playing by the rules. Everybody needs to abide by it. So that influence or that positive impact, I think it's also, it's really well taken. And one more example, you remember that when you were not with us, Shane, but with the pandemic, one of the first things we had to implement was this safety screens all around to have the employee the member still be able to shop. And it was like safety standard that, we're paying extra, but we have to keep our members safe. And then all their competitors started to catch up. So I think not only we lower prices, but we set up really good practices as to how we treat our employees, how we respect the law, and how we're really a good, corporate player in these markets.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting you bring that up. I think that goes along with kind of how we think about the standards in our facilities. They need to be top notch. I mean, I look at our warehouse club operators, and in my opinion, our warehouse clubs are as good of a retail operation as any in the world. And they really do a great job. And that was certainly exemplified during the pandemic, which was a really hard situation and tragic for many families. But I remember hearing from members that, one of the places where they felt safest was at a PriceSmart, because we were, we had hand washing, we had, all the sanitary things, taking temperatures, we had the screens, we had like a whole protocol that we had developed, and so people felt safe, and that we try to do right by our employees and our members. Well, thanks. Those are thoughtful answers. Francisco, you're on the board of PriceSmart Foundation, which, we're grateful for your service there. And I just, maybe just to take a moment because that's we've been doing philanthropic efforts for many years, and we don't do it for any sort of government relations outcome, but I'm just curious, kind of as you've served on the board now for a year or two, kind of how you see, how's that been for you? Have you enjoyed being on the PriceSmart Foundation board? And, it's relatively new. We're doing this workforce training and supporting women-owned businesses. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's fine. We didn't prep for this question.
No, I know. I kind of like to throw a bunch in there.
It's been very interesting because it's been an area that I've only seen from afar of what Up America said or the other activities. And being able to hear directly the impact of the activities that we take is just impressive. And I think that's where someone like Shane plays a terrific role, because I think we need to tell it more. We just need to tell, first of all, be really proud. Be really proud for, the company we work for, what we do, the values we have. And then I was very grateful when I met Shane, because I've always felt we were missing that piece that can really, as eloquent as you do, speak and tell the world, where are we about? Where is our values? What does this company stand for? Is it only a club? Is that only but it's more than that. We have really impact in the community and the people we serve and our members. And I don't think we tell it enough.
Yeah, we're not good at telling our own story. Yeah. That's something that Shane and our PR and communications team, thanks podcast team, they're helping us, tell our story, and we're getting better at it. And I think it's a beautiful story. So speaking of stories, One of the things I'd asked you to think about as we kind of prep for this conversation is if there's any stories that you can think of that like were either like really interesting learnings for you or challenging, or, a situation where because so much about what you do, particularly Shane, but not only, also Francisco, there's so much in business and life that's driven by personal relationships. And I think what we found, particularly in recent years, is like we really rely on the embassies, and the U.S. embassies are really important partners for us, but we've been able to build great partnerships with local government too. And when we've been able to identify, like Shane said, win-wins, where things that can benefit multiple stakeholders, where there's winning all around for citizens, for the government, for employees, and so on. And I'm just curious, if there's any stories that come to mind that were real good learning experiences for you. And it doesn't have to be at PriceSmart. It could be somewhere else in your career. Thinking, Shane, you've had a long career doing many, many different things. And I'm sure a lot of those experiences play to how you think about approaching challenges and opportunities at PriceSmart. So,
was there? Well, I can think of a story on the U.S. side and a story on the local side, and I'll try to be brief. But I think they're both illustrative of the kind of internal collaboration and then external engagement that's allowing us to kind of net some wins, so to speak. So on the U.S. side, Francisco and I had a chance to travel. We prioritized going to Washington early within the new administration so that we could get out in front of people. And we met with members of the executive branch, talking about kind of USTR, State Department, Commerce Department. We met with congressional champions, by which I mean members of Congress who represent the districts in which we operate in Florida and in California. We went to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is the world's largest business association, an important voice for...
It's quite an impressive building, huh?
Yeah, it is. A beautiful building. A full view from the top of...
I know, the White House, I know.
And met with some other folks. And part of that was to remind people about this incredible kind of impact that and contribution that PriceSmart makes to the U.S. economy. Driving U.S. exports, I think we're the 29th biggest exporter overall of goods in the country. We're the number one exporter out of South Florida and the port of Miami. A lot of people don't know that. And we source from all over the country. So
that's pretty amazing.
It is.
Number 29. How is that measured?
But by volume and goods.
So containers?
Yeah.
Not by dollars.
I think by volume.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So cube.
But so with that, a lot of folks are surprised by that, and we export more than even some of our competitors. I won't say their name, but that also surprised me. So some of like the world's biggest companies.
Yeah. Well, it has a lot to do with where things are coming from, right?
So part of that outreach was putting the good news story in front of people so that we're kind of on their mind when a situation comes up. But part of it, in the midst of, a whole series of new executive orders and trade policies and tariffs that have been coming out, was to get in front of folks to be able to say, hey, without us contesting the broad goals, because we're nonpartisan, non-political, but to be able to say, hey, have you thought about how this might impact a company like ours or other U.S. companies, and how the proposed action might actually end up having the unintended consequence of undermining the very policy goal that you say you're seeking. And Francisco and I saw on a number of occasions people have an aha moment. Say, wow, and what's amazing,
it's a little scary that they had to have us make them have an aha moment, but
and I'm sure people have made the point too. And this is often about we need to go in as coalitions and lots of voices.
Yeah.
These are volatile times, policy wise and geopolitically.
Yes,
but the outcome that we've seen on some issues, I'm thinking about shipbuilding for one, have been that they have moderated the approach in a way that seems to have taken into account some of our concerns.
Yeah, which kudos to you guys for getting out there and telling the story. That's something we can do is educate. And we are constituent, and we have employees in certain districts, and we have goods that we purchase in other districts, and I think it's important for us to voice our concerns and point of view.
And, and then it's about calibrating the right way to do that and trying to do it in a coalition when we can.
I agree.
Have a more...
In a non-political way. I mean, it's just facts. It's just information.
Many times there are authorities within countries that want to preserve their sovereignty or autonomy around making certain rules, sanitary, registration requirements, the kind of foods that you allow is great.
Customs is another classic.
Customs is another. And, and sometimes you get bureaucratic infighting so that even if let's take the DR, right? And I know you met with President Abinader not long ago, pro-business. He's saying all the right things.
And I think he's doing a lot of the right things. I was very impressed that he would even go out of his way to be at this event. That was an event where, we were groundbreaking a new DC that would support regional exporting and importing.
Right. And I think he's a great example of somebody at the high level who wants the DR to be pro-business, investment friendly. I'll have a chance to go to the DR next week and meet with folks more at the working level to talk about some of the regulatory challenges we face. And, sometimes there can be a disconnect between what leadership wants and what's happening at the working level.
A lot of inertia.
The question is, are there some things that we can do as a company and in concert with other companies or other business associations to try to kind of put some of these leadership priorities to get them to the forefront of the actions and decisions that are taken at the working level?
Good answer. Yeah, not an easy thing. It is a region, of course. I was being, I guess, partially facetious, but it's just regional integration, I think, is the real best phrase, best term.
Yes.
And it's a big challenge. And remember, these are, compared to some of their neighbors, these are relatively smaller markets. So they stand to benefit from scale, right? And Colombia is, give or take a little bit, it's about the size of all of Central America. And so it's a huge market. I think the third largest in the region, if I'm not mistaken.
And, the reality of Latin America is it has enormous, and the Caribbean has enormous potential. These are countries that by and large really want U.S. companies to be their key partners. But there are a lot of challenges in the region, and it makes it difficult for companies to do business. And that's going from the political and economic instability.
Business challenges. There's also human challenges in terms of, just poverty, education levels, access to basic services, and so on.
Which is why I think it's so amazing that, going back to the PriceSmart Foundation question, that we complement our corporate efforts by trying to upskill, parts of the population, particularly underserved communities, by helping them access some of the skills that will allow them to enter the workforce and participate more fully.
Right. Do you have any stories you want to share, Francisco, from your career that kind of pertain to the importance of relationships and in terms of getting things done when the cards are stacked against you?
I have one to share. I was just thinking about, just following your comments, that to me, one of the aspects that we just need to reinforce is, I think we help to the extent we can is rule of law. We're trying to,
I agree with that,
make sure that rule of law prevails in the markets where we operate at. That is critical. But I was thinking about a story to share, and I even called my team, and I want to send kudos to my team, because without their excellent work and support, I couldn't do what I do. So it's kudos to all of you. They just tremendous help. And I called Tricia, and it's remind me of, good stories that I can tell. And it's interesting because most of them were covered by confidentiality. It's well, you can talk about this. Oh, no, you can't. Oh, yeah. Listen.
I know. I guess maybe I shouldn't have had our head legal person on the pod. Actually, we can't.
No, but there's one that I love to share. It's a great story, and it's related to El Poblado opening.
Okay.
And again, I've been working very closely with Rodrigo.
So El Poblado, of course, is a beautiful neighborhood in Medellin. And it's where we've opened our most recent warehouse club in Colombia. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we've been trying to open something in Medellin since I joined, the past 10 years. I joined after they opened Las Americas, which was our first club in Medellin. Mm-hmm. And with Rodrigo, we saw 2 or 3 opportunities, and none of them worked. For one reason or another, they didn't work. Suddenly, the opportunity of Poblado comes up. Sherry was CEO. And I still remember, we flew down, met with the owners of the site, and said, let's go for it. And there are a lot of different things potentially risky with the site. It's located in the main part of the most affluent part of the city in Medellin. Very high dense population, a lot of traffic.
Oh, yeah.
And we went ahead, we got our construction license, we start construction. We're probably $25 million in the investment. And Santiago, which is a lawyer in Colombia, gives me a call and said, Francisco, we just had the police come over to our site and they want to shut us down. And you say, what for? They say that our license for construction is void and null. So immediately, all hands on deck. I dropped everything I had, flew down to Medellin, and the municipality, which was a new government that was in place, which is more leftist oriented, more like we have now with Petro. And they had heard complaints about neighbors saying, how can you put a PriceSmart in the middle of the most congested part of the city? Traffic is going to explode.
I'm trying to think of the name of that. The Transversal Inferior.
Transversal Inferior. That's it. And it was very interesting because first, always my hat is, the legal approach. Do they have a right? And then in the validity of a license, so we meet up with, I formed like an A-team of outside counsels in Colombia. One thing you got to know, I think I've told you many times, if we go into litigation, it's because we're not winning. So I always say, if I'm going to go in the ring, I'm going to try to find the best lawyers to make sure that
you like boxing or something?
I love boxing, yeah. But I always put this analogy. It's like, if we fight, it is because we're not set up to win. So went down to Medellin, found the top-notch counsel. We actually have 2 counsels helping out on this. But I realized quickly that legal angle was not going to be enough. These was more a politically motivated issue. And I didn't have Shane then. And I just realized we need someone for government affairs. But the other angle was to work with the community, to the root of the complaint. So Andres, our country manager in Colombia, did a great job. So we started meeting with the local residents, and starting coming, what were their complaints, trying to.
This club is surrounded by high rises, luxury high rises.
Very well-to-do, very powerful people with strong opinions. Someone just loved us, some didn't love us. And then the third, so was legal, community, and the third aspect was going to the embassy and knocking door, and that was really important. And being a good corporate citizen with a clean sheet, they said, look, we need help because here's an investment, here's our license, complies with everything in law, and we're just being, told we can continue. And the embassy immediately also got on the phone. So it was a free. To me, the learning was not only tackle a problem just by one angle, but look for help. I think Robert also gave one that advice. Every time you see a problem, find other ways to solve. And I ask opinions and find other people to help you. So this was a good approach between government affairs, community, working with operations, and legal. And we got to open our club, and we won the case. So yeah, very, very fortunate.
It's a great story. So many stories. I think it's a good kind of segue to start getting into some broader topics around PriceSmart and management, because I think like one piece of advice I've heard many, many times is like every person should have a kitchen cabinet. Like you need to know who your people are, that your mentors and your people you can go to for advice on hard problems. And certainly in business and in management, there's sometimes things come up. Whether you're managing a team of 1 or 2 to a whole company, things come up that you may not know how to deal with. And so it's critical to have good advisors. Yeah, it's a great piece of advice. So switching gears, talking about PriceSmart more broadly, managing teams, you both either are currently or have managed teams for many years. And we have many managers that listen to this podcast. It's PriceSmart's a human capital heavy sort of business. Running a warehouse club business is a people business. Any retail business is a people business, especially when there's a heavy brick and mortar component. So I'm wondering, when you think about your jobs, what do you love about working at PriceSmart, and what advice can you offer our listeners, especially those that manage teams, or those that are a part of a team that could help enrich their experiences as part of our group, our team?
Let me talk about this one first. It came to me, the first thing comes to mind, I heard it from a previous mentor, and he always said, be confident and hire smarter people than you. It's going to be find someone that's smart, hire them. Don't be intimidated. And I'm very happy, very happy for the team we've been able to build. And it was a very difficult decision because when I first started the company, again, all the resources we had were based in San Diego, and that's not where we needed a team. So from there, we started recruiting. But yeah, it's always, finding smart people and just, let them grow and provide them the tools and the resources so that they can really shine. I'm not a micromanager. I think I'm a bit of the opposite. But making sure people feel empowered to bring their opinions and propose change and are vocal when things are not going right. I think that is critical. And then the other part of the question, now I lost what track.
It's okay. You went deep.
Yeah.
What do you love about working at PriceSmart?
Every day is different. Every day is a new challenge. So in almost 10 years, there's never been a day I've been bored. Never. So every day I wake up and there's a new.
You'll be worried if you're bored.
Yeah, I mean, I really worry that like if it's stagnant, if you're doing the same thing over and over, and you may just be, you put your blinders on and you may just be probably, doing the same thing. Probably that's why my role somewhat evolved. So I started doing legal, and then from legal, we got ethics and compliance, which was very close to legal. And then I started reading and meet with a lot of GCs from other companies. So it just keeping always, listening from other sources, and realize everything's related to risk. It's always how risk management is. And so to me, I've, bringing Shane on board is how do we help understand the risks that the company face, how we manage them and how we mitigate them. And again, is how do we take things off your shoulders or John's so you guys do the thing that you can do so that we can get paid. Otherwise, we don't get paid. So it's making sure that you guys have that free of mind that someone else is taking care of this. I don't have to worry about it. It's being taken care of. It's going to be well done, so I can focus on my own task. But going back to the question is, every day has a new challenge, a new case somewhere here or there, a new opportunity that the team finds. And if my only feels about if you're bored, knock on doors, talk to people, find what are the pain points. Is there anywhere else I can help? And I'm sure you'll find interesting things to do.
Not a dull business. Yeah, that's for sure. Thanks for that. How about you, Shane?
I think I would echo this to say that, I just love the people-centered ethos of this company. It starts with leadership and it filters through every aspect of the company. I think, GA, Government Affairs, is placed within legal, and it's exactly the right place to be. I feel incredibly fortunate to report to Francisco, and while I report to him, I am really working with kind of informal authority in a sense, because I don't have a big team, but I'm here to support each of the business units. I think I want to go back to a point you made earlier, David, which is, the way in which our mission, in particular our values, help center us and remind us who we are. No matter, what the political winds are, no matter what the geopolitical challenges are, we've got this robust business model that seems to do well in good times and somehow in bad times too. We put integrity at the forefront, along with the other values, passion, community, respect, continuous learning, all things that I feel like align with my own personal values. And I just love that this company is not, somehow changing its orientation as a result of, big shifts at the political level. That our values are long-standing and steadfast. That makes me really proud to be part of this company. On the question of leading teams, what I have found is if you have that clarity of mission, if you know what your North Star is and your values, right, that is the starting point. And then it's about bringing in the right people, focusing on, hiring for the strengths, maybe mitigating the weaknesses, but really focusing on what are the strengths of your team. How can I continue to empower, as you said, Francisco, and develop these folks, and then give them runway, right? Give them the tools, give them the resources they need. Make sure that they know it's safe to take smart risks.
Yeah.
That it's okay to fail and that we expect it, but it's also expected that there will be accountability, that they will own those mistakes and be honest about them, so that we can have that culture of continuous feedback and learning. I think those are a few elements I'd maybe add.
Yeah, well, I appreciate what you shared about the company very much. I think about, I like how you made the connection, because I see that connection too, in terms of like managing people has to be really tied with our values and the things we love about our culture. And the only way, you know, companies are kind of like religion in some ways, you know, because the only way for this to work, I mean, think about it. We're in 4 time zones, 2 languages, 3, I guess, if you include, I feel like I've said this before, if you include Papiamento. And then, you know, like the only way for this to really work between all these different cultures, I mean, everybody shows up to work with their own stuff. And how do we make it work? We have to have a shared set of beliefs and values that we can align around regardless of what we bring from home, right? And that's how we know that we are who we are, and we can show up and provide that wonderful experience for our members regardless of where we are. And that's how we build in that consistency. But and I think it helps when there's volatility in political winds. And we've seen it with Costco. You know, Costco said, well, we're not getting rid of our DEI program. And, you know, I don't know if anybody really had much to say about that. I mean, maybe they lost a few members here or there, but, you know, it just kind of blew over because, you know, they know who they are, and who they are is who they are, and they're going to stick to their guns. And I have a lot of respect for them for that. And I want us to be like that. Like that's the kind of core ethos I want to be able to emulate. And I believe we have that. So on the people side, I do want to ask you a question about hiring for advice for our listeners. Hiring is hard. How do you know who to hire? What do you look for? Is it competence? Is it character? Is it chemistry? What do you look for? If you could give one piece of advice on hiring, what would it be?
I guess for me, it is very difficult, and it's a little bit of a gut feeling. And it's to me, just qualifications is critical. So some jobs just require some qualifications and some skills. But then on top of that, to me, is more the attitude, the willingness, the openness to engage, and curiosity. If you see someone that is curious, that wants to understand, that is honest and just wants to go and learn, that to me is probably the best indicator of okay, maybe I could fit. I also, one thing I learned from Robert, I'll share that is, I remember, I think it was actually, we were hiring, I think it was maybe Shane. And so I was talking about Shane and who he was, etc. And he started asking me personal questions about Shane that I knew, but I didn't know to that level. And he was just really understanding who this person is to the extent you can, because there are some boundaries you can cross. But really go a little bit deeper and probably spend, 5-10 minutes talking about what do they like, what are their weekends around, what are their hobbies, is there some connections, and that was also a very good point.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yep. Know the person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think your points, there's probably some fundamentals that you have to get somebody who's got the required skills, competence, as you said. I think character is huge. And I would put in, character, the idea that you mentioned, which is, it's a certain kind of open-mindedness and adaptability, flexibility, willingness to take feedback and to grow, right? You're going to need that from anybody on a team just to be a good kind of teammate. I will share one thing, David, that somebody said to me, that it was an ambassador, actually. Always just kind of stayed with me. And he was hiring a number 2, what's called the deputy chief of mission, and found somebody who he really liked and had incredible skills and experience. And at the end, didn't hire that person. Why didn't you hire him? They said, well, you know why? Because in many ways, that person is just like me, and we already have me. And I've got my strengths, and that's fine. And we don't necessarily, we could have more of that, but I've got a whole number of weaknesses. I'm a great strategic thinker, but I'm not necessarily as good at organization and implementation. And I need somebody who can drive things for me. And so what I'm looking for in the person that I hire is somebody who can complement my skills with things that the rest of the team or the organization really needs in a leadership position, so that we can have this more holistic.
Really good advice. So could I sum it up? Hire for your weaknesses. Staff your team to balance your strengths.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, if in fact your weakness is something that the organization actually needs to get.
Sure.
And you need to know yourself very well.
But we all have things we're not good at.
Yeah.
That's really good advice. I like that story. It's a good story. So I guess, we're coming up on our hour together pretty soon here. You guys, in addition to both being executives at a retail company, you're both fathers. You're both sons. You have other identities. Anything you want to share about your families and hobbies, stuff you do outside of work?
It's funny. I was talking to Shane about hobby because we came with a question, and she was like, "Well, I think."
Like, shit, what do I do outside of work? Yeah.
Well, I think, and we concluded that the hobbies are at this point of our lives are kids, and I'll talk about myself. But yeah, it's every weekend is devoted to. One is about to go to college. I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old, so is spending as much time as I can with them and finding ways to connect, either baseball or going out hiking or any other activity. I think it's I think it's a really good question though, because we need to have work-life balance. We need it. You said it. It's a marathon. You want to keep the same level of energy, and if you enjoy what you're doing, find the balance. And if you don't have it, then talk to your manager, talk to someone. But I mean that you can only last in these jobs doing at the level we do if you really have your North Star also, not only at work but only with the other side.
Totally agree.
So
Thanks.
It's a nice way to put it. Yeah, I think that's right. I would like to say that first of all, I just want to take a second to thank my spouse, Rami, who now for more than a decade has kind of followed me, so to speak, as I've moved to different countries around the world, first as a diplomat, and now with PriceSmart, traveling on a pretty frequent basis to other countries. And so she, has to do the night shift many times and has a lot in her hand, and I don't take a little bit of capital out of the bank account, each time I
call it chips.
There you go.
You only have so many chips.
But the good news is she's done a wonderful job and getting to do some travel and as well. But I really do try to dedicate kind of my weekends and that free time to family. It's just this past weekend, I was camping with my 9-year-old son in a Cub Scouts activity, which was great fun. Next weekend, I think I'm going to be doing walking ballet performances and a choir performance.
Nice.
We'll see what Rami wants to do. I'm an aspiring surfer, so maybe I can join you in the water.
Okay,
and
that's a new one. I didn't know that.
So for everybody who hears this and is able to,
who's a tennis player is Hildebrand.
I do know that. I already suggested it to him.
Yeah,
I'm ready. We're coming for you, John.
There you go. Nice. Okay. Well, thanks for that, guys. Appreciate it. Happy to go in the water anytime. I can go for a surf. So, kind of wrapping up, I always end with the same question for our guests. And it's if you could share one thing that you've learned in the last year from someone that's made a positive impact on you, what would it be?
Your dad told me, look for the opportunity. Look for the opportunity and not the risk. So yes, identify the risk, but what can come out positive out of that risk? So yes, we have a risk of tariffs, we have a risk of this, but that may be an opportunity for a more efficient supply chain.
Yeah.
Or, we have a risk or, and that there's always, if you look at different angles of the same question, you may find the opportunity. So
yeah,
that has put me, it really has reduced a little bit of some anxiety of seeing so many potential risks that can jeopardize the company or employees. And then also looking at the other angle is just putting this balance, and it's been very helpful.
Yeah, he has this amazing ability to twist and turn around things and see these different perspectives. He's very, he has a great skill in that. He's never settled.
And it's interesting because you feel like you've explored every door, and by the time I get to him, I feel like I've done everything. I can't find a way out. Like suddenly, like this. Crap. And then you see the light there.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
Thanks for that.
Well, that is clearly a huge gift that your father has, and is what I think has made him such an extraordinary leader for this company for, since its founding. And I would say something very similar. We didn't actually compare notes on this, but I will tell you that sort of early in the year, as we were all kind of facing more and more policy and geopolitical uncertainty, I had lunch with your father one day, and you guys weren't there for this. And the first thing he said when we sat down was, Shane, a lot of my friends are complaining. We're not going to complain. We're going to figure out what we're going to do. And I just loved that. And he also has inspired me and encouraged me, I think, to take a kind of contrarian approach to, yes, be aware of the risks, to make sure we're providing that advance warning, but to not sort of just dwell in that place, to also, as you said, turn things around, which, coming from government, which is a pretty risk-averse culture as well, this is new for me and is requiring me to open my mind in new ways. So I really appreciate the lesson, and I think it's very much in line with what you've taken as well.
Yeah, I think it was my grandfather that would say, don't worry, think. All right? Don't worry, think. Yeah, well, thanks, Shane. Thanks, Francisco. Yeah, this has been a wonderful conversation.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, me too. I've learned a lot, and we talked about a lot of abstract and kind of big topics, but I think, it comes down to real, tangible, real life things that affect our people, affects our facilities, our merchandise, it affects our employees, our members, it affects the communities where we operate. So I think, we have a profit imperative as a for-profit public company, but I think we also have a purpose in why we do what we do. And it's not just to make money. And I think, as we think about the role that we play as a corporate citizen, it can be far beyond just grow, grow, grow. Sure, we want to grow, but what happens when we grow? We provide more well-paying jobs with good benefits and good salaries where people can grow as we grow. We help our small vendors grow as we grow. We have a growing tax base that supports the governments where we operate. And we can offer better value to our members as we grow because we have more scale. And finally, if we do all those things right, we also can offer a better and better return and more enterprise value for our shareholders.
David, I just love that. And I think we are a company that, I think it's no exaggeration to say we literally have a positive impact on millions of lives. We are helping to raise the middle class in the countries in which we serve. And we are pushing U.S. exports, but we're also pushing the local economies. It is really a company with an extraordinary impact.
Well, I feel very fortunate to get to lead it. Let me tell you, it's a great privilege and a great responsibility. So we have lots to do coming up, and I'm looking forward to the year ahead. We're, of course, entering our fourth quarter, and we're going to have a good agenda next year. But thanks for being here today, you guys. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on another episode of At the Club. Please comment. We want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. If you like what you've heard, I want to know. If you want to hear about something else that we're not talking about, I also want to know. So looking forward to seeing you at the next episode of At the Club. We'll see you soon. Thanks.